All right.
Okay, it's linking up. Okay,
Alhamdulillah.
you're good to go.
Okay, could you make me the host again?
Yes.
Jazakallah khair, Muhammad. Thank you for your technical support, as always.
No problem. Make host.
All right, we're ready to start. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good evening, everyone. My name is Munira Madison, and on behalf of Mass Youth National Team, I welcome you to this evening's Mass Daily Focus Youth Edition. Each Tuesday, the Youth Department will be hosting this program in the hopes that as we prepare for and enter the blessed month of Ramadan, each person watching, every single member in your family, will find something that resonates with them in one of our virtual offerings. Mass Youth National, just a little bit about us. We seek to empower youth and young professionals across our nation and equip them with the tools or opportunities to not only be actively engaged, but to emerge as leaders and learners in their community. SubhanAllah, a wonderful example is the annual Hearts for Humanity's youth-led campaign that happens every March. And this March was even more special because it was the month where COVID hit and the whole youth-led team had to pivot and readjust. And mashallah, they raised over $55,000 for accessible healthcare in our country. That's just one example of what can happen when we empower and engage our youth. Tonight, speaking of youth, we have a very special youth Qari with us, Qari Hamid Malikzai. Hamid Malikzai is a Quran reciter and nasheed artist who leads prayers and tarawih at masajid across the Northeast. You may have heard him before at events, at charities such as Islamic Relief, or you may have heard him on his YouTube channel or Instagram where he has a large following. He uses his large following to share his love and praise for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we enter this special program, this special episode of Mass Daily Focus, where we're going to be talking about mental wellness in Ramadan, mental wellness in response to what has happened with COVID-19 and quarantine life. Let us begin with the Quran, to check in with ourselves, to revisit and renew our intentions, and to center and ground ourselves so that we may be in constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also open to receiving that which He has entrusted others to give. So Jazakal Khair for joining us, Qari Hamid. Would you please begin the recitation? I will put you as spotlight.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. أياما معدودات، فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر، وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين، فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له، وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون وإذا سالك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداع إذا دعان أجيب دعوة الداع إذا دعان فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون صدق الله العظيم.
Masha'Allah. Jazakallah khair, Qari Hamid, for that beautiful recitation.
Bless you and everyone. Thank you very much for having me.
Wa'iyyak. That beautiful recitation. You know, tonight we are covering mental wellness in Ramadan. And that recitation, inshallah, it has brought you into the spirit, to taste the spirit of Ramadan right around the corner. And that might make you a bit anxious because of all the turmoil that is around us right now, the uncertainty, the instability. And because of that, we decided to cover mental wellness and mental health. And, you know, we're so honored and lucky to have Naseeha Mental Health join us this evening to address the challenges we may be facing during this time of instability, to give us some tips on what to do and to show us the resources that might help us or someone that we love who is struggling during this time. And so to give you a bit of an introduction about Naseeha, tonight we have Muhsin Kamali with us, the head of development, and he'll give us some information on the resources and for mental wellness, after which we will hear from our featured speaker, Emil Qutb, who I will introduce after the introduction to Naseeha. Jazakallah khair, Muhsin, for joining us tonight. And I will make you the spotlight video so that you may share with us a little bit about what Naseeha is, what do you do, and how can we be of benefit?
Inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I only have a few minutes, so I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. Inshallah, if anyone has any sort of questions or comments, feel free during Q&A. We'll try to answer them. And if we need a follow-up session, inshallah, we'll do that. So before I get started, I really want to say thank you to Mas, Munira, Muhammad, everybody for putting on amazing daily focus groups. Jazakallah khair to Qari Hamid for that wonderful recitation. We're just going to talk a little bit about Naseeha Mental Health. I'm sure all of you, some of you may know about us, some of you may not know about us. So my job here today is simply to do a brief introduction on Naseeha, what we're doing and how we're helping not only the youth, but also adults and other people facing challenges in their life. So before I get started, if you look at the screen right now, I'm hoping everybody can see my screen, inshallah. That's the number. So we are a North American charitable organization focusing on mental health for the Muslim community. But we also say, we do not say no to anyone who calls in, regardless of their ethnicity, race, or religion. So the toll-free number, and it's toll-free, so it's free all across North America. It's 1-866-NASEEHA or 1-866-627-3342. So if there's anything that comes out of this, my part of tonight's lecture is whoever is listening to this, inshallah, please remember that phone number. and share it amongst your friends, network, family. You never know when someone's going to need help, whether it be ourselves or someone close to you. So inshallah, please let everybody know about the 1866 number. It's there. It's a free service for everyone who's suffering to call in. So a little bit about Naseeha. We were founded in 2006 as a telephone support line, mainly for Muslim youths across North America. In the past few years, we've grown exponentially to serve communities and individuals in their journey towards positive mental health and well-being through the toll-free peer support text helpline, and as well through our education outreach programs. So if you will, the telephone helpline is set up for, when a situation occurs, so kind of like the cure, if you will. And what we're trying to do is to prevent these issues from even taking place. And that's where we go into communities. We offer support through workshops and various other education outreach initiatives. So a couple of facts about Naseeha. So we were founded in 2006. Alhamdulillah, this year we received our 501c3 approval. So now we're an actual official registered charity in the US. So inshallah, people who are donating to us can actually get a tax receipt as well. And that's going to be very important for us in our exponential growth in the US. And we're hoping that MAS is going to be a big part of that, inshallah. So when you look at the screen, you'll see CERT team and assist trained. What that means is we've established a critical incident response team. So when there's a critical incident, we can actually have a team to look at those critical incidents and actually offer therapy potentially on one-off cases. And assist is it's a training that's done for, in prevention of suicide. So all our counselors are trained not only in CERT and assist, but other trainings that help them to support people who are in need. Alhamdulillah, in 2019, we expanded to 7 days a week. And one of the biggest features for 2019 was our launch of our text line. So now anyone who needs help, and if they're uncomfortable calling in, we can actually receive counseling over text messaging. So you can actually text the same number. The only difference is the text line right now is open Monday to Friday, only 5 days a week. And again, it's 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the goal for us, inshallah, one day with du'as and support is to have the helpline open 24/7. Some exciting news for this year. I know COVID's hit, but one of the biggest things that we're trying to achieve also this year up here in Toronto is open up a world-class facility where we're actually going to be able to offer web therapy and on-site counseling. And that's looking to be underway towards the end of the year, inshallah. We just received an amazing grant for web therapy. So we're going to be betaing web therapy, inshallah, towards the probably mid to end of 2020, inshallah. So look out for that. And just some, statistics on our calls, because a lot of people ask, how many calls do you get? How many text messages do you get? So on average right now, we average about 300 calls a month. It varies. Usually it's higher than that. And our texts are around 100 to 150. And just to give you guys an idea, we held over 80 workshops alone just in the GTA last year. And we're looking to expand that throughout North America. So I know I'm almost out of time. This is a quick snapshot on what our statistics look like. And sorry, it's not in color. Inshallah, we'll try to send that out in color soon. But if you look at the top, those are our calls that come in, and at the bottom are our texts. And you can see the spread between male and female. It's about a 70 to 30% mix right now. And these are very common with the regular statistics that are out there. So I want everyone to understand that just because we're Muslim doesn't mean that we're immune to the general stats out there. Okay, these issues are affecting our community just as much as it is the rest of society. One thing to note, if you look at the 3% crisis issues that we're having on the phone calls, that number actually doubled or tripled on the text line to 8%. What that indicates is people are more open to talking about very serious issues via text. So even people should know that the helpline is confidential, it's anonymous, it's non-judgmental. Still, we feel as human beings, sometimes it's hard to call in. So we open up the text line. So feel free to let people know that the service is also available by text. One of the biggest things tonight that I want everybody to know is that though we're going through this pandemic, we're still offering our services And a lot of the content that is available now is through our Facebook page. So we have amazing videos on tips and techniques as to how you can deal with anxiety, stress, these kinds of things. And Amal's going to get into some amazing things when it comes down to the well-being around Ramadan. We also have in-depth webinars. So if you check out our Facebook page at Naseeha Mental Health, you'll see some pretty neat webinars on various topics. We have daily tips that we send out through Instagram and Facebook. And one of the biggest things, since this is about the youth, is our Naseeha circles. So for the first time, we're now able to offer our circles in an online platform. So all you university students, seniors in high school, this is geared specifically towards you. So make sure you check out our Facebook page. We have one coming up on Thursday, April 16th. And I look forward to hearing feedback from everybody, inshallah. So that's about it. I don't want to take too much more time. Inshallah, I want to thank again Mas, and let's remember everybody who's suffering right now. We have a lot of people who are going through a very difficult time. And let's remember also those who have already lost people through this pandemic. Inshallah, we pray as Naseeha to, inshallah, keep us all safe, keep us all healthy. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect everybody, especially our youth during this pandemic. Jazakumullah khair. I'm going to be here for any questions that anybody has later on in regards to Naseeha and our operation, inshallah. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair, Mohsin, for sharing that information with us and for joining us all the way from Toronto tonight. You know, something that really strikes me is how accessible your resources are. And that's really, it really comes down to a lot of people don't know how to access the help that they so desperately need. So that's why we're covering this tonight. And inshallah, Emma, she'll be taking us through the ins and outs of what we should be looking for in ourselves and others, and giving us some tips. So I'd like to introduce our featured speaker, Emma Qutab, tonight. She holds a master's degree in social work, prior to which she completed undergraduate training in human rights and equity studies. She is part of the education and outreach team with Naseeha Mental Health. As a registered social worker, she is passionate about child and youth mental health settings. And has worked across various school boards and community mental health settings. Her research interest lies in facilitating access to trauma-informed and culturally safe mental health services. And she has also published research on spirituality and social work practice. Emma, Jazakallah khair, we're so honored to have you join us. In addition to accessibility, something that Mohsin also mentioned is the fact that we are Muslim, and so it's so hard to find an outlet or an accessible resource that understands our spiritual ideologies and our background and, you know, what we're looking for. And so thank you for joining us today, because you are an example of somebody that we could be turning to. We do have a tremendous number of licensed professionals who are Muslim, who are available to serve as a resource, and you are one of them. So thank you. I'm going to go ahead and make you the spotlight video.
Mm-hmm.
And
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
You're good.
alhamdulillah. Yeah, Jazakallah khair, Munira, Qari Hamid. It's an honor to take part in this here today. And just like you mentioned earlier, I think personally, one of the blessings that I've been finding, staying at home and spending more time on social media is just the amount of explosion of mental health professionals that are coming out and sharing their pages and private practice. Despite the hardship and the difficulties we're going through, is just, it's really nice to see how everybody is reaching out and trying to help one another during these times. And especially so having way many more webinars and spotlights on the important topic of mental health. And Jazakumullah khair for making this space today for such an important topic. Okay, inshallah. So we'll start off with mental health and well-being. From a very young age, we all know about how to keep ourselves physically healthy, right? We all talk about eating healthy, exercising, sleeping, taking care of our dental health, flossing, brushing our teeth. So no doubt when it comes to our physical health, we know how to keep ourselves physically healthy, or at least know the steps that keeps ourselves physically healthy. But when it comes to our mental health, when it comes to our mental health hygiene, what are we doing? There's a lot of stigma, as we all know, and a lot of misconceptions out there. When we talk about mental health, sometimes we think, oh, it's the absence of a mental illness, and that's actually not the case. The actual definition, according to the Canadian Mental Health Association here, is that mental well-being describes your mental state. So it's about how you're feeling, how you're coping with day-to-day life. And most importantly is that our mental health is dynamic. It's always changing. So why is it that we're talking about mental health right now? Why are there so many webinars out there, so many Instagram talks, posts, all of that stuff about mental health? As you can see over here, our mental health is impacted by there are different factors that impact our mental health, such as our genes, our biology, our environment, and our lifestyle. And right now, after the COVID-19 closures and lockdowns, two of these factors are being impacted, which are the environment and the lifestyle. Both of these factors are being impacted, which actually increases our vulnerability, and it increases, makes us more susceptible to develop mental health challenges. And with no doubt, everybody is experiencing some kind of a fear. And when you think of fear or anxiety, it's kind of a spectrum, right? And we can't doubt the impact that this has had on everyone. So when it comes to kids, kids were going to school on a day-to-day basis. In some areas, they were going to school on Friday, and come Monday, there was a lockdown announced in their city, and they were no longer going to school. Impact on teens, such as going through exams, assignments. Now everything is shifting to online work, and online work can be quite challenging if you're not even used to it. And not only that, but specifically for teens, their peer circles, their friends is such an important part of their life. And to be able to not have that aspect, not have that ability to socialize and connect with their friends can actually be quite stressful. The impact that COVID-19 has had on adults, aside from the health-related anxieties and challenges, the impact it had on many of our jobs, many people being laid off, with the kids being home, having to take care of the kids and having to become a teacher overnight, and then having to worry about our aging parents as well, not having the ability to go and check in on them like we regularly do. And when it comes to older adults, our senior population, even before COVID-19, they may have had their own challenges, but now with COVID-19 and the closures and the lockdown, there's that added stressor on increased isolation, on not seeing their family and friends, maybe not having access to the medications or the health that they require during this time. So what we can agree on right now is that COVID-19 has had some kind of an impact on our mental health during this short little while. So when it comes to anxiety in the body, and why am I focusing on anxiety today? It's because anxiety is one of the common reactions that many of us had during this COVID-19 period. And when I say COVID-19 period, I mean pretty much the past couple of months when, it just exploded in the world and we all had to take measures that were unprecedented and we didn't have to do before. So anxiety is our response when we feel any kind of a threat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually created this in us. It's part of our brain. In fact, as you can see here on the visual you have in front of you, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. And this basically represents the alarm system in our brain. So I guess if you were to think of a smoke detector, how every building has a smoke detector and it goes off when it senses any kind of smoke, even if you just have like bread in the toaster, that's basically the smoke detector in our brain. It's the amygdala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it as a way of protecting us when we sense any kind of danger, when we sense any kind of threat. Right now, what kind of a threat are we facing? So right now in the past 3 months, the kind of threat that's facing us and setting off that amygdala in our brain is the amount of stress, the changes, the uncertainty, the overload of information, the instability. So this is all causing an anxious response in many of us. So like I mentioned, the kind of impact anxiety has on us, it can affect our body, it can affect our sleep, it can affect our eating habits. Some of us may even notice our hearts pounding a little faster than usual, especially as you're watching the news or being bombarded with all this information. It affects our mind. It affects the type of thoughts we're having. You may notice that we're having more worried kind of thoughts, more what if kind of thoughts, more racing thoughts, more worst case scenario kind of thoughts. And finally, it can impact our behavior. And as you can see on the visual here, the 3 common types of behaviors are the fight, flight, or freeze. So I'm sure this happened across the US, same here in Canada, and everywhere around the world. We all heard about the toilet paper mayhem that took place. And over here, this visual, I'm gonna call him Toilet Paper Tony, and I apologies to anyone named Tony out there. But there is a toilet paper Tony in all of us. We all have had that panicked response, that anxiety that made us act in ways that we don't usually act in. And that's just our anxiety speaking for us. And personally, I'm gonna put myself out there. My personal toilet paper Tony moment came out when I went grocery shopping like 2 weeks ago. So I've been home for 2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, I went grocery shopping. And as I was walking by the freezer aisle, the shelves were empty. And for a second, I was like, oh my gosh, did I miss the memo? Like, am I supposed to stock up on frozen vegetables and frozen veggies and make all these smoothies? And then I noticed that I was actually going towards these fridges, trying to grab whatever was left over there. But then I took a step back and then I was realizing, subhanAllah, this is my anxious response. This is my panicked response. I'm not usually the type that would go to the freezer section and just like grab all the items. But it's almost like everyone else's anxiety is, anxiety it's contagious. That kind of panic that's around us right now, it is contagious. So the more we learn about how anxiety works in our brain, the more we learn about the kind of patterns that it shows up in our behavior, in our thoughts, in our body, the more we're going to be able to manage those feelings and those overwhelming, intense feelings at times. So one thing that distinguishes anxiety is that it gets you to think about the future. A lot of times, whenever you want to catch yourself, if you are having an anxious thought, look at the tense. What kind of a tense is it? Most of the time, it's not a present tense. It's using it's using a future tense. What if this happens? What if that happens? And I'm not going to go more into detail around things that can address anxiety because Naseeha has actually done a great job sharing a lot of resources the past couple of weeks around actual practical techniques that you can try throughout your day-to-day life. One of the most important ones that I want to highlight for you is breathing. It almost sounds like a common sense thing. It's common sense to breathe, but actually, if you think about it, when you're in that anxious response, we forget about breathing deeply, breathing thoroughly to calm the nervous system down. So I totally encourage you to go over to the Naseeha social media and other outlets to watch these resources and learn about all these different techniques. Okay, so again, anxiety is not the only emotion, especially that now this period is prolonging. We may experience other kinds of emotions. And COVID-19 is only one aspect of our life right now. A lot of us had struggles even before COVID-19, whether it's with our relationships, whether it's with our health, whether it's with our academics. So adding on top of that, the COVID-19, it could bring up a range of different emotions. So it's important to acknowledge what emotion you're feeling right now. A lot of times we have the tendency to just ignore that emotion or push that emotion, but kind of like hunger, when you're hungry and you try to ignore that you're hungry, what do you become? Hangry, right? It's almost like that hunger takes over. And emotions in a way kind of have the same impact on us. If we don't acknowledge them, if we don't name them, oh, they're going to be so persistent. They're going to be so pushy, trying to make you to acknowledge them. So the more that we take, the more practice we have in terms of acknowledging these emotions, labeling these emotions, the better able we'll be to actually manage these emotions. I have a visual here about the feelings wheel. So even if you just Google feelings wheel or look up this website right at the bottom, it shows you that there are way many more emotions that we can even remember, right? A lot of us got our emotions 101 information from the movie Inside Out. But these 5 emotions that they have in that movie are just your basic primary emotions. And that's a great way I love that movie. It's a great way of introducing emotions to young kids and expanding their emotion vocabulary. And even for us as adults, even start with that movie to expand your vocabulary. And then from there, learn more ways of being able to identify your emotions. Name it to tame it. It's actually a concept that's used in psychology and mental health, that the more you can name the emotion, the better able you will be to manage that emotion, to tame that emotion. Okay, grief and Ramadan. So Ramadan is a special month. And subhanAllah, as I'm speaking about it right now, I am sensing that anxiety as I'm talking about it and all of these thoughts that many of us may be having right now. But what kind of a Ramadan are we going to have this year? Ramadan is a special month. It's a month of Quran. It's the month for fasting. It's a month for worship. And even though Ramadan is not just all about food and iftars, but we can't deny that, the community involvement is a very big aspect of who we are in Ramadan and what Ramadan means in our life and our experience in Ramadan. The big gatherings and the big iftars, the Taraweeh, seeing family, getting ready for Eid and preparing for it ahead of time. All of these are experiences that we already know we're going to be losing out on going into this Ramadan in just the coming week. And even as I speak about it, you may be feeling those same feelings, right? That unsettling feeling. And that can be called grief. A lot of times when we talk about grief, we think of losing someone, that you're experiencing grief when you lose someone. And that's true. Added on that, during this time, there are some of us who are actually experiencing the loss of their family members, whether it's to COVID-19 or other illnesses. But it is a reality that right now we're experiencing grief in different ways, on an individual level, on a community level, and on a global level. So grief with our experience right now, it's associated with the loss. So the loss of things that we knew gave meaning to Ramadan, the loss of experiences we're going to be missing out on. So I have here a visual for you about the 5 stages of grief. And what's really important to note is that these stages are not linear. So you don't just move from one stage to the other to the next. You can bounce back and forth between all these stages because grief it's one of those emotions that's quite complicated. It's not so black and white. So you start off with acknowledging that grief, that yes, there is some element of grief right now. There is a loss. Once you name it, in order to tame it, you can understand the stages of grief. So with one of the first stages, or one of the stages that we could be experiencing is denial. That's when we say a lot, especially earlier on, right? When it hit us that, oh man, for example, with the COVID-19, this virus won't affect all of us, maybe some of us. We may, a lot of us were in denial of the impact and the gratitude of this virus. There could be some anger, such as, I have to stay home. I can't engage in any of my extracurriculars or, engage in any of my hobbies. Can't see my friends. There could be, experiences of bargaining. Like, okay, so if I stay home for 2 more weeks, does this mean that by Eid time I could go to the masjid and engage with the community? There could be some sadness, when it's all just hitting you and you feel like, man, I don't even know when this is going to end. There are a lot of memes going around now on Instagram and stuff about, about how long this might last for. And they're quite funny, but in a way, there's a lot of grief right behind it. The feeling of, in a way, maybe even hopelessness, man, is this even finish at one point, which it will, and we'll get into that. And finally, acceptance. And I think this is probably the stage that some of us may be at right now. Acceptance doesn't mean that you're okay with what's going on, but it also means that, okay, you're accepting that this is happening right now. And when you're just like you mentioned earlier, how the mass youth had to be flexible and had to think on their feet and, come up with a different way of engaging people during this month. That's a way of, kind of applying acceptance that, okay, now we got to be flexible and adaptable to what's going on and deal with our current situation. One important thing, though, that I want to mention is that a lot of recent research on grief adds the 6th stage, which is finding meaning in your grief. David Kessler is known to be one of the world's experts on grief, and he recently added the 6th stage, and it's about finding your meaning during your process of grief. And what does that really mean? Meaning is closely attached to our spirituality, closely attached to how we make sense of the world, what grounds us. And this is the final stage of grief. And you're able to take that negative experience and grow from that experience. And this is when you're able to make sense of what is it that happened? Why did this happen? What are you meant to gain from this experience? So as Muslims, how do we gain meaning during these times? And I couldn't think of any other hadith other than the one that you can see on the screen right now. And for the sake of time, I'm going to skip reading it. But it's the hadith about sabr and shukr, right? The wonderful is the fare of the believer. If bad happens to him or her, they practice sabr. And if good happens to him or her, they practice gratitude, they practice shukr. So this hadith is teaching us that there is wisdom in everything that happens to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an opportunity to come closer to him, whether it's through moments of difficulty or through moments of ease. With sabr, we have all these verses that remind us about sabr, that with hardship comes ease. Inna ma'al usri yusra. And a lot of times when we think of sabr, we need to reapproach our relationship with sabr, because we have a lot of misconceptions that sabr means you're passive, that you just sit there and you just have sabr, just stare at the wall, have sabr. But really, sabr is an active verb. It's not passive. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything about it. With sabr in these situations, you're acknowledging what you're going through. That's an active thing that you're doing. It also means that emotionally you're reminding yourself, the saying that this too shall pass, that nothing will last forever, and nothing, life will always remain uncertain except for death. And that, your trust is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that everything is in his hands. And I know that these, for many of us, depends on your journey, but for many of us, these could be quite challenging to get used to and to really internalize and practice. But what sabr helps you do, what patience helps you do, is to take action. So what kind of action are you doing during these times? Some of us are getting quite creative and volunteering in their community. A lot of people have had COVID-19, different campaigns and collecting different donations and assistance for different families that may be struggling during these times. A lot of us may be using this time to increase our worship or try things that we haven't tried before or haven't had the time to do before. Connecting with family or connecting with friends, things that we weren't able to do before. It's almost like they're putting that patience, that sabr, into action. And shukr, there's so many ayat, and actually, Jazakallah khair, Qari Hamid, like the verses that you recited just before this, they were perfect. They pretty much summed up this whole presentation. So if all you heard were the verses, they mention in their sabr and they mention in their shukr. And both of these concepts are connected to Ramadan. And with shukr specifically, gratitude, there's a lot of research in positive psychology around the practice of gratitude. There's actually even a study at UC Berkeley that literally it brought three different groups of people, and it assigned like a group of people to, on a daily basis, to journal about random things, and for a group of people to journal about things that kind of bothered them throughout the day, and the third group of people to journal about things they were grateful for that day. And over time, they realized that those who journaled on a daily basis about things that they were grateful for, their mental health and well-being, even their physical health, did it did very well compared to the other groups of people, which shows you that there is a direct impact of the practice of gratitude on our day-to-day life. But then another reflection that I had actually, as I was speaking to some of the organizers of this talk, a lot of times now we're talking about grief and the losses that we're bringing in with our experience with this Ramadan. And we don't realize that our current experience in the year 2020, it's not unique. And it didn't hit me actually, because I didn't realize that there are a lot of people in our community that have experienced similar Ramadans in the past, where they had to do the Tarawih prayers on their own, where they were not invited to iftar parties, where all they had was just barely anything to have for iftar, such as the experiences of our convert revert sisters and brothers, or families who might have gone through family violence, or single men and women who weren't married and had to spend it all on their own. So this is not unique, and even though for many of us it may be the first experience, this is something to be grateful for, that this is not a chronic thing we often experience on a year-to-year basis. If we just reflect on the fact that many other people in our community have had similar Ramadans, and this is not new, how different do you think this will make us act, come the next Ramadan? What meaning is this going to give us? and shape our actions after this Ramadan? How much more empathetic are we going to be to the experiences of those people in our community that we often, don't give as much of a voice to or space for? And with that, how will you find meaning this Ramadan? What kind of action are you going to be taking this Ramadan? And I think right now, maybe we'll take some time for Q&A, and then we can come back and hear if you guys have any input for this question, or hear any engagement from you guys.
Yes, exactly. Jazakallah khair, Sister Amal, for that wonderful presentation. I think it was very insightful. We do have a question that came in that I want to get to right now. How can one overcome anxiety that stems from things that happen in one's life that are out of one's control? I realize we are all experiencing a form of this with our new normal. However, I was already experiencing several major difficulties in my life. Mother in hospice, at a brother's house, a lot of family, a lot of illness. I'm making dua for her with yaqeen. I'm also dealing with other difficulties in my life as well that are causing anxiety. It stems from not knowing what will happen. I just want to know what I can do to tame this anxiousness. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
So that's coming from one of our viewers. Yeah.
And Jazakallah khair for having the courage to share your story with us. It's not easy to open up about these topics. So like I mentioned earlier, anxiety, everyone has a little bit of anxiety. However, when anxiety is persistent, when anxiety happens for a very long time, when it shows up in different areas of your life, when it's impacting, your school, your job, your family, when you feel like it's really holding you back from reaching your potential, that's when it can be very helpful to seek support to learn more about this anxiety and seek professional help to address this anxiety. There's a lot of misconception out there that seeking professional help means, right away, there's going to be like the medication route and that's how you address it. And honestly, people are so unique. Not everyone has to pursue that route. It's very important to involve your family doctor in that discussion, but to also like peruse around the different therapists that offer treatment for anxiety. Specifically for anxiety, the most evidence-based intervention for that is cognitive behavioral therapy, or you may hear CBT. And the nice thing about this kind of therapy is that it trains you to become your own coach. It trains you to become aware of all these patterns, and over time, help yourself and have the tools and to feel empowered to manage the anxiety over time. So never suffer in silence. Don't suffer in silence. Anxiety can feel very debilitating. MashaAllah that you made it to this webinar, and you must have overcome so many challenges in your life despite the challenges with anxiety. This goes to show and say so much about your character and so much about your strength. Don't there's hope that there's always a way. That there's a lot of help out there. There are a lot of resources. This is why Naseeha, services like Naseeha, we're trying to raise more awareness about how to access these services. So even through, getting started through being connected through Naseeha, where you can be connected to a therapist or a local mental health professional to where you live. So definitely there is treatment for it. And yeah, inshallah, I hope that this answers your question.
Thank you, Sister Emil, for answering that question. We did receive that one. For time's sake, if you do have any other questions, we will be, inshallah, bringing Naseeha back for another session, and we can take note of the questions to ensure that we touch upon those in the next session. But to just close this all out, I mean, I was taking notes, and really everything you were saying was resonating with me so deeply. I would like to ask you the question that you were posing to our viewers, which is, how are you going to find meaning in Ramadan? Because it really struck me, like when I started seeing 10 days till Ramadan, I thought I was okay with everything until I started seeing that. And then I started having this response. And then when you were talking about it, you were like, oh, well, I'm talking about it. So maybe our listeners and viewers will get a good piece of advice from how you'll be finding meaning in your Ramadan.
And by no means am I the expert over here, because this is going to be pretty much my first Ramadan as well, not being able to go to the masjid, not being able to partake in a lot of the traditions and practices that usually make our Ramadan quite special. But most importantly is to adjust your expectations, right? That, you know, going in with this idea that this will be a different Ramadan. It doesn't mean that it will be a bad Ramadan per se. Your perspective is everything, right? You know, there's this the saying that says, what you focus on grows. And the grass, it's not that the grass is greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. So if you want to focus and put the ideas in your mind that, oh man, this Ramadan is going to be terrible. I'm going to be fasting all day. I'm going to be so lonely. And you're literally stuffing yourself with all these thoughts. You're going to find all the evidence that prove these thoughts for you. And it's going to be a terrible Ramadan for you. But if you just take a step back after this talk, acknowledge that, yes, it will be a difficult one. But, you know, with difficulty comes ease. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Look for that ease. What kind of activities can you still incorporate during your Ramadan with your family or even individually that still bring you that feeling or that spirit of Ramadan? So, for example, for those living with families, you know, with whatever you have in the house, with whatever means you have at the house, it doesn't need to be expensive, or you don't need to stretch your resources too thin. But things such as bringing in like the physical spirit of Ramadan through like decorations, through certain dishes or meals that you associate with Ramadan. You know, Taraweeh, a lot of us you know, count on going to the masjid for Taraweeh, but what about the Taraweeh experience at home? Maybe if there are several sons at the house, maybe taking turn every night with having a different imam for the night. So looking at different ways to bring the family together during Ramadan, different activities that could be done. You know, my dear sister Muna, I was talking to her earlier today and she was like, hey, how about having like a Zoom iftar? And I'm like, wow, like there's just way too many Zoom invitations that I'm getting in my email, but that's fine. I'll accept that Zoom iftar. And we don't know how it's going to be. I mean, this is the first time probably where like the whole world went online, and now even our grandparents know how to work Zoom, and I'm pretty impressed. Like, we've got to adapt. So do I have the answer of certain things you can do? To be honest, it's going to be a new experience. Go into Ramadan with curiosity. Don't go in saying, oh man, it's going to be terrible. If you go in with that mindset, yes, you will find all the evidence out there to confirm your belief. But if you go in with the open mind that, you know what, this will be a different Ramadan. I'm curious as to what kind of an experience I'm going to have in this Ramadan. Keeping in mind your spiritual tool of sabr and shukr. And I'm not the one to be speaking, you know, for any of the spiritual reminders. There are great organizations out there that can fulfill our spiritual knowledge and practice during this month. But your mindset makes a big difference. And yeah.
Yes, those are all such wonderful pieces of advice and wonderful ideas. And what struck me is, you know, I saw a meme or an infographic that was explaining a constrained mindset and a growth mindset. And what you're describing seems to be a growth mindset. Like, how can we grow with this? How can we adapt to it? And what is something that we can benefit from actually with this adjustment?
Yeah, exactly. That's really important when it comes to being more conscious and mindful of having a growth mindset, and kind of actively looking for the little wisdoms we may have during our day. After all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought us through this. There must be wisdom. Whether we learn about this wisdom during this time or later on in our life, there must be some wisdom behind it. So look for these, you know, gems, these wisdoms throughout your Ramadan experience this year.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Emma. Thank you for your time and efforts. Jazakallah khair, Mohsen. Thank you, Jazakallah khairan, to the whole Naseeha team who are ensuring that there are accessible resources, especially for our Muslim youth and anybody really to access. Thank you. We're going to close tonight with a closing dua. And then we're going to be making some announcements and saying salams. But before I do that, Brother Mohsen, is there anything you would like to share before we close out?
You know what? I don't want to take too much time. I really just want to emphasize to all of us who are listening that now that we know about Naseeha, for example, and the services that are there, we're responsible as Muslims to go out there and champion mental health, mental wellness, especially going into Ramadan. You know, a lot of people out there, you know, like Sister Amma was saying, don't, you know, are going to have a very different type of Ramadan this year, right? And now that we know that Naseeha does exist, I want to encourage everybody to champion this as something that you can do during Ramadan, something that you can actually go out there and help people who are suffering, right? And not only mental health, do what you can. You know, Ramadan's a time for us to give back, right? Give back sadaqah as much as you can, give back charity. And people are going to need that more than ever this Ramadan. So keep that in mind, inshallah. Like I said, I don't want to take too much of anyone's time, but just bismillah, just make dua for us, inshallah. Pray for those who are going to be going through a difficult time in Ramadan, and everyone. I you know, I hope everybody has a great Ramadan, inshallah. You know, stay positive, stay hopeful. And Sister Amma was amazing in what she presented. So inshallah, let's take some of that and really put it into our day-to-day, inshallah.
Jazak khairan once again to Naseeha and to the both of you, Brother Muhsin, Sister Amal. I think we're already receiving such wonderful feedback from this program. So alhamdulillah, Jazak khairan. Qari Hamid will be closing with a beautiful dua, inshallah, after which we will make a few announcements. All right.
Assalamu alaikum once again. I'm going to make a dua in Arabic, so if you please say Ameen afterwards, inshallah. اللهم لك الحمد أنت نور السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن ولك الحمد أنت قيوم السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن ولك الحمد أنت الحق ووعدك الحق وقولك الحق ولقاؤك حق والجنة حق والنار حق والساعة حق والنبيون حق ونبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم حق. اللهم لك أسلمنا وبك آمنا وعليك توكلنا فاغفر لنا ما قدمنا وما أخرنا. أنت المقدم وأنت المؤخر وأنت على كل شيء قدير. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا برحمتك واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت إنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت لك الحمد على ما قضيت ولك الشكر على ما أعطيت. نستغفرك اللهم من جميع الذنوب والخطايا ونتوب إليك. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ربنا ارحمهم كما ربونا صغارا ربنا ارحمهم كما ربونا صغارا. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. اللهم إن هذا المرض جند من جنودك تصيب به من تشاء وتصرفه عمن تشاء. اللهم فاصرفه عنا وعن بيوتنا وعن أهلينا وأزواجنا وذرارينا وبلادنا وبلاد المسلمين، واحفظنا مما نخاف ونحذر، فأنت خير حافظا فأنت خير حافظا وأنت أرحم الراحمين. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول أو عمل، ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول أو عمل. اللهم بلغنا رمضان، اللهم بلغنا رمضان، اللهم بلغنا رمضان، ووفقنا فيه على الصيام والقيام برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار، وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار. يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم، وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصل اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Once again, Qari Hamid Malakzeh, for joining us today.
May Allah bless you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you, everyone. All of our viewers, whether you're watching this live via Zoom or you're watching the replay, this was also streaming live on YouTube. We will get it up on our Facebook, inshallah, Muslim American Society. Definitely make sure to be following us at Mass Youth National, at Muslim American Society on social media, so you can stay up to date with all of the different programs that we have available, not only now, but also throughout the month of Ramadan, virtual programs and offerings. This is one way that you can still remain connected and preserve your mental wellness, especially during this time. So once again, we have every day the Mass Daily Focus, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be continuing that throughout the month of Ramadan, inshallah. Right now, the youth department has a Friday podcast live about relationships and marriage for young professionals. So that's this Friday. We have a couple joining us at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is on live on Crowdcast, but you can find the event on our Facebook and also at Mass Youth National on Instagram. We also have our final virtual open mic Youth Talent Live this Saturday. So it's our last one before Ramadan begins, where we're trying to uplift everyone's spirits and showcase the talent that we have across our ummah, especially amongst our youth. And so people sign up and they perform or share their skill sets and talents with us. And so the final one before Ramadan is this Saturday, and that is at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tune in every single day for Mass Daily Focus, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This Friday, we have our relationships podcast, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Crowdcast. And Saturday, we have our final virtual open mic. Thank you once again, Jazakallah khairan, to all of our panelists, to Qari Hamid, and to all of you who are watching and tuning in. Inshallah, you are preparing for a blessed Ramadan, and we hope that something in this program resonated with you and helped you to do so. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.